Hey, good morning. Welcome. We're starting a new series today, and I want us to first think about groups that we have ever been a part of in our lives. So a lot of us have been on a sports team, or maybe you were in a fraternity or sorority in college, or maybe you had a small group in a church that you've been a part of. I just want you to think back to any group you've been a part of, and I want you to answer this question. What was the best group? What was the best group you've ever belonged to? That group that you felt like, oh, man, for that season of life, we captured lightning in a bottle. That was it. Turn to the person next to you and tell them what was the best group you've ever belonged to and what made it so great. Ready? I'll give you a minute. Go. All right, let's bring it in. Here we go. Let's talk about this. I think the idea that we have been a part of, or even the idea that we long to be a part of some sort of group, some sort of community, that stuff's hardwired deep into us. It goes all the way back. If you go back and read the beginning of the Bible, God creates Adam, and the first negative thing that is said about all of creation is when God looks at Adam and he goes, "It's not good for man to be alone." And so he creates Eve. Now, ostensibly, that's about marriage, and we've talked about that before, but more than that, it is about community. It is about this deep-seated need inside all of us to just find some people that we belong with and we belong to, that we connect with, to find that community. We were never designed to be solo sapiens. We were designed to be part of a group in some form or another. And this is true whether you're an extrovert, whether you're an introvert, you're an ambivert, all the verts, we're all designed to connect and have community and be part of one another. And this is super hardwired into us. You see this with mothers who give birth to babies. There is a connection there that it's like, oh, you need me, we need each other. There's this deep bond that starts to form. There's literally chemicals that the mother's body produces that are bonding chemicals. Fun thing I learned a few months ago, men produce those chemicals as well when babies are born, strangely enough. And they produce these sort of bonding chemicals, and it's hardwired in there. There's something going on. It's why we have something in our body called mirror neurons. It's why if I see you crying, the thing inside my brain that cries fires off too. Now, people who know me well says the thing inside your brain that cries is kind of broken, but I still feel it in here. And so, and we all have that. Some people, the crying comes out of their face, and some people, you definitely feel it on the inside, but we mirror each other. And this is why it is impossible for people to ignore all the haters and go off and find ourselves. We can't find ourselves because part of the way we know ourselves is through other people. We have to be connected. We are formed and shaped by community, not just by ourselves, and that's really powerful. So we're starting this new series today called Find Your People, and we're going to talk about this for 4 weeks. And the core idea that I really want to get into today is basically this. You were created by God for community. And in order to have that community, you're going to need to do some work to find it, and you're going to need to do some work to remain in it and to remain a part of it. And I think that idea that we need to find our people is extremely relevant to all of us. Like if I had to guess why you came to church today or why you were part of a church at all, first and foremost, I think we all come searching for the divine. Like we have a sense that go to school, then go get a job, and then have a family and work and come home each night and watch Netflix. And I think we have a sense that isn't just quite it. Like that's fine, and there's value in those things, but that's not all there is. We have a sense of like there's something else going on in this world. There's something else in life, and we're kind of missing it if that's all we make life out to be, if that's all we do. And so I believe all of us have this sense that we're haunted. Haunted maybe is the right word. There's a spiritual reality to the world, not necessarily ghosts, but there's a spiritual reality to the world, and there's a mystery, there's an enchantment to this life, and we all feel it. On some level we go, man, there's something going on here. And so when we go to church, part of it is that. We want to connect with the divine. We want to know that cosmically we're not alone. But beyond connecting to God, there is this find your people aspect of coming to church. And you go, I'm going to go be part of a church because I want to find my people. Now, that could be something like I want to find somebody to date, and that's fine. But I think even broader than that, we all just long for a community, and we want to find someone that we can connect with, that we can know and be known by, that we can love and be loved by, someone that we look at each other and go, oh, I get it, you get me. Like we're encouraging each other. We're both on this journey of spiritual growth, and so we long for that. And so that's what this series is about, finding your people. Now, to do this, I want to look at examples from the life of Jesus, and particularly today, I just kind of an introduction to this whole idea. I want to just talk about a couple ways that Jesus organized his friend groups, right? How he navigated relationships, because I think there's some things in here that are actually very instructive for us. And so to start with that, I want to take us to Luke 6, when Jesus chooses his 12 apostles. Let me read it to you. Luke 6, verses 12 and 13. It says this. One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. When morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, whom he also designated apostles. All right, Jesus, in his teaching in the first century in Israel, he's walking around and teaching people, and a lot of people come to him and they want to be close to him and they want to know him and they want to follow him. These are disciples. These are people who are like, I want to be like you. I want to do life the way you do life. And so there's a lot of those people in that group. And he looks at that entire group and says, I'm going to pick 12 of them to be apostles. Apostle, the word means like sent out ones. These are a special group of people that walk with Jesus in order to carry his message. He's going to sort of build what he's doing in the community on these 12 guys that he chose. Some of it, it's weird. It reminds me of like, did you ever do pickup games as a kid? Like for me, it was kickball as a kid when you had that big red ball that if it smashed you in the face, it left a mark on the side of your face. You know that ball? So we would play kickball on the playground growing up, and the way they would pick teams, you'd pick two captains, and they were usually like the cool kids. And so, not me, some of the other kids, and they would pick teams, and they'd be like, okay, remember, some of you are maybe scarred from this, but you remember this, right? And they'd be like, okay, I want you, and you, not you. You're cool. You're on my team. Chris, nope, the other Chris, too soon. And this is how we pick teams, right? And some of this feels like this. It's as if Jesus gathered everybody together who had been following him and be like, okay, I need 12 apostles here. I want you, not you, that kind of thing. And it's kind of like that, except there's an intentionality to it. If you go back and look at that verse, it says that Jesus prayed all night about this. So he was very intentional about who's moving into this circle of relationship. And some people, the 12 that he chose, got very close access to Jesus, and a lot of people did not. And before we freak out about that, let's just acknowledge that is reality in life. Some people you're going to be close to, and some people you're not. And if it was okay for Jesus to be in that kind of situation, I think it's okay for us too, that you're going to be closer to some people than you are to others, and some people will have access to you that some won't. So for this series, I'm going to use this example here, this illustration. We'll come back to this a lot. But there's basically like three circles of relationship. At first, what you have on the outer circle is the crowd. And Jesus had that. These are hundreds of people that are around you that you kind of see faces in the crowd. These people can see Jesus. They're around him. They walk with him. For you, your crowd could be people in school, maybe at work. If you live if you're in a big company, then it's like there's a lot of them out there. All your social media friends, if there's hundreds, maybe thousands of them, that's kind of the crowd. Your acquaintances, maybe there's that group. The second level in is the community. And this is what Jesus picks. Out of the crowd, he chooses this group that he's going to be closer to, his tighter community, and he chooses 12 of them. Now, it could be more than 12, but 12 is a pretty good number. And for Jesus, he spent a lot of time with those 12. For you, this could look like a sports team that you were on, that you logged a lot of time with, or smaller. Maybe some families in your neighborhood that you're close to. That's kind of your community. Maybe people that you have similar hobbies with or in a similar life stage. Those people are kind of in your 12 or so in your community. And for a lot of us, our relationships kind of stop there. We get to that point of, okay, I've got my 12 plus people, that kind of my community, and we stop there because that feels safe. All right, they kind of know me. Kind of being known is fine. I guess I'll just do that. And we stop there. And one thing I think that Jesus understands, and that we often forget, is that it's not enough to just have the 12. You've got to actually go deeper in. You have to go deeper in. Look at Luke 8:51. When he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him, talking about Jesus, except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. So Jesus goes to do this healing. He's going into this house. He does not roll in with all 12. He tells everybody to stand outside. He goes in with Peter, John, and James. So even out of the 12, he has a core of about 3 to 5 people. And you see this throughout the Gospels. You see that Jesus takes those 3 aside and has them, at the healing of Jairus right there, at the transfiguration when they see Moses and Elijah and all this like on the mountain. You see that experience. At the Garden of Gethsemane, he pulls them aside to have a special prayer with him. So even out of the 12, there's a couple people that have really close access to him. And so to take another look at the circle, you have the crowd on the outside, hundreds of people. You have this community, 12 plus people, and then you have this core of just a few people. And that core, these are the people that know you and that you know them. They love you and you're loved by them. These are the people that you call when you're in a crisis. These are the people that are there for you through thick and thin, right? This core group, they get you. They can tell when something's off with you. Like that core group of just a couple people that really understand you. What we are describing in this series is actually, the word is intimacy. And intimacy in our culture, you say that word and people think of something like sex, but it's not that. Intimacy is a depth of relationship. It is that knowing and being known by someone. It's what Esther Perel, she refers to it as into me see. Into me see. There is this group of people that you have this deep connection and they can see into you and they know you well. And that is what is needed if we're going to combat something that we all feel, which is loneliness. Richard Bach says it this way: the opposite of loneliness is not togetherness, it's intimacy, right? And we will settle for togetherness because we think that's going to do it, but that's actually not going to do it. What we need is intimacy. You've heard this before, right? There's a loneliness epidemic in our culture. We're very fragmented, and we don't know each other. We don't know our neighbors. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. And we may spend some time with people, but usually what we do is we stop short of moving them into our core group where we experience true intimacy. So here's my question. Do you have a core group of, let's say, 3 to 5 people? People that you can be your real self with, who can handle your messiness. People you can call or who will call you when your soul is crushed. People who notice when things are off with you. People who you can be real about your brokenness with. Do you have those people? Or do you put up walls so that nobody can ever actually get into that spot? Do you put up walls that stops people from getting that close? Jesus had that. He had that core group. He loved everybody, but not everybody had equal access to his life. The crowd around him, they got a lot of visibility. They saw Jesus. They were near him. They were around, saw what he was doing. The community, they got more time from Jesus. They definitely got time that the crowd didn't get. But the core group around Jesus, they got the most intimacy. Now, there isn't a command in the Bible that says you need to structure your life this way. And there's no you must go find intimacy, go find 3 to 5 people or anything like that. I just think that if Jesus is God on earth and he structured his life this way, it's probably good for us to do it too. Like, we should pay attention to relationship and who's in what circle of our lives and go, okay, man, I think there's something here. Like, it was important enough for Jesus to do it. I think maybe I should do it as well. I saw a comedian who said this: the greatest miracle of Jesus was that he had 12 best friends in his 30s, and they weren't his wife's best friend's husbands. That might be true. There's something going on there. Now, if we're going to take those three circles, we can actually analyze that in maybe on another level. There's an Oxford anthropologist named Robin Dunbar, and he did a study where he analyzed the level of relationships that we have. And he actually assigned numbers to this. So if we put the graphic up on the screen again, of the people in your crowd, your community, your core, the crowd is 150 plus people. The community is going to be 12, let's say 12 or 15 to 50. You could have maybe that many in your community that you're pretty tight with. This could be like a small group or a team you serve with or a sports team or whatever. And then your core is, we can all probably handle maybe about a maximum of 3 to 5 people. But we especially, of that, some of those things will come naturally, but we especially are going to have to work to get that core. We need to have those people because the core group is going to have a huge impact on us. We actually looked at this verse when we did our last series called Out of Pocket, and we talked about financially the impact people have about who your friends are. Proverbs 27:17 says this: as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. In other words, as we rub up against people, and I would argue the people that are most in our core, there's a potential there that they can sharpen us, that we will become better versions of ourselves, we will become closer to God because they're pushing on us, we're pushing on them, and they're making us better. But the reality is, a lot of us have some pretty dull friends that don't sharpen us. They have, or the real reality is maybe we're the dull friend, right? A lot of us have people in our core that have a dull faith. They have a dull belief system. They have a dull marriage. And therefore, they are dull friends. And if you are the average of your 5 closest friends, which many people have pointed out, we need to think about that. Are the people in our core dull? Or do they actually sharpen us? When you look at your 5 closest friends, or 3 to 5 people that you could say are in my core, if you have them, do you want your faith to look like theirs? Do you want your marriage to look like theirs? Do you want how they handle dating to look like theirs? Do you want your level of self-control to look like theirs? Craig Rochelle, pastor, says it this way: show me your friends and I will show you your future. And that's just undeniably true. The people who are in your core, they're going to shape who you become. Parents in the room, do you remember how your parents didn't want you to hang out with that one kid? Remember that? And you thought your parents were so old school and they're trying to ruin your fun, and they didn't get it. But what your parents could see and what you couldn't see at 13 was that kid's probably not going to take you down a good road, and it's not good for you. And they could see that you're going to become like those people, and it's very important who those people are. And so your parents put some limits there, and they, made it hard for you to get together with that friend, right? And now that you are parents, can't you see that with your kids as well? And don't you think that maybe it would be beneficial if you drew some lines around it and said, actually, yeah, I'm not going to encourage you hanging out with that kid because that's not the direction that you need to go. Like, you can see things, and they're going to resent it just like you resented your parents for it, but there's something there, and it's part of the function of parenting to go, hey, we can see the bigger picture here, and we want to step in and say some things. Those of you who are maybe students, think about this. As you head back off to school, it's back to school time, whether it's middle school, high school, college, whatever. Think about the fact that there are friends that you're going to make this year, or maybe it's some friends that you have, and they're going to be in your core. They're going to be your people. And there's a chance that they're not going to lead you anyplace good. That some of those people that are in your core are going to take you down a bad road doing stupid things. And it will be hard to break up with them in your friend group, to be like, I'm just not going to hang out with this person. That's going to be hard. But what would be harder is to go down the road with them to destruction. And so you want to avoid that. You want to pay attention. Who are these people that are in my core group? This really matters. So how do you get relationships? Let's talk about this. How do you get relationships from the crowd to the community to the core? There's actually a professor at University of Kansas named Jeffrey Hall, and he did a study based on kind of those levels of relationship. And basically, here's what he discovered. The primary factor of moving people from crowd to community to core, the primary factor, and we'll talk about others in the series, but the main factor is this: it's time. The amount of time you log with someone affects what circle they're in. So you can look at the circles this way. For people to move from into crowd, people that are in your crowd, you spend about 50 hours with them, okay? If they're going to move into the community, you're going to log maybe 90 hours with them, and then and you might have experienced that. Crowd are people you went to school with, you saw, or whatever, but community might be a sports team you're on, okay? Over the course of the season, you might have logged 90 hours with those people in a way that you didn't with other people. But to get people in your core, you need 200 hours with them. This is why you might be tighter with your college roommate than almost anybody else from back in that part of your life, because you logged 200 hours or more with that person. That's how they got into your core. What this means is this: the time I spend with people determines who is in my core. The people who are in your core, it's not determined by who sends the funniest memes. It's not determined by people that I wish were my close friends. Those things are nice, I guess, but the reality is that can just be wishful thinking. The reality is your core group of friends is going to be determined by who you spend the most time with. So here's what I'm wondering. How many of us have complained about not having those 3 to 5 friends, not having that core group, when in reality, we just haven't put in the time? Like wishful thinking, I want to have those kind of friends, but I haven't logged the time to actually make it happen. Now, there's a lot of reasons why that may be the case. There's a lot that goes into that. It could be a season of life thing, you know. I find that parents of small children, it's difficult for them to get this. It's difficult for them to log that kind of time because, well, the small children part requires so much time, right? Like I understand that. So that it can be a challenge. People who, you're working full time, grad school, those kind of things, like some of those seasons where it's like, man, this is just a heavy lift for a season, and it's very difficult to find my people. And the problem is you're going to long for it. You're going to wish you had the connection, but it's just so hard to get because of the way your time is currently structured in the season that you're in. This is also true for people who work really odd hours. If you're spending a lot of time caring for aging parents, there are just seasons that are difficult. But we have to push against all of that. There is a rise, and you all know this, you're feeling it, and you've seen the stats like I have. There is a rise in anxiety and depression and loneliness in this country. And if we're going to push against it, this is going to be part of the answer. This is how we're going to get there. We have to dive in and get connected and not withdraw and be isolated. Man, I think this is one of the worst lingering effects of COVID. We saw this in COVID where they would say, oh, we're all in this together, except there was no together in our together. We were literally apart, and they said if you get together, you're bad. But we're all in this together. And it's like, I don't feel very together over here in my house by myself. That feels very not together, regardless of how many memes you make about it and how many companies make that as a tagline for their commercial. Together requires togetherness. And one of the lingering effects is that we got used to withdrawing and being isolated, and we decided that that was good enough. And we're paying for it in a spike in anxiety and depression and loneliness. We're paying for all of that withdrawal. Now, I think you can find community and find your people in this church. I think that's possible. Now, I know in the Bird Theater on a Sunday morning, it's a little bit dark. Maybe you come in, maybe if you came in late and you leave early, you're not going to see anybody if you don't stick around. And it's hard to stick around. The lobby's kind of small, right? There's some challenges. I understand there are limitations here. But if you don't take a step beyond just this room at just this time, you're probably not going to find your people here. You're probably not. It's difficult to do in this environment. It's not incredibly well set up for it. So if you're not making friends here, if you're not finding your people, let me ask you, have you taken a step to serve alongside some other people? Are you on a serving team? Have you taken a step to join a small group or formation group? Are you getting involved in some sort of group where you're meeting together regularly outside of Sunday morning? If you're not doing any of those things, if you're not signing up and showing up for some things, I'm not surprised when you say it's hard to make connection here. Like, it's going to take time. You're going to have to log time. And this is something on staff that we talk about all the time. How do we create environments and spaces for people to connect? This is so important to us. We value this so much. As just people, we want friends and connection as well on staff. And so this is so valuable, and we go, what are the ways we can construct, what are the ways as a church we can build it out so that we are community centered around Christ, but that we know each other and we build relationships. It's hugely valuable. So we end up creating spaces at this church where we ask you to connect to God and find your people. We set the table for you and put the meal out. But the truth is, you got to pick up the fork. You're going to have to pick up the fork if you're going to eat. We have an opportunity coming up on September 8th where you can pick up a fork, maybe literally and metaphorically. This series will run 4 weeks. At the end of the 4 weeks, on that Sunday, we're going to have an event right after church, a connection event with all our formation groups, all our small groups. You heard Jaron talking about what his formation group was like. We'll talk more about the differences in some of those groups that you could be involved in starting this fall. We're going to have a connection event where we're going to give you charcuterie, and who doesn't love that? We thought about calling it Shark Week. We still might call it Shark Week. And we'll have an event where you can meet people and an opportunity to find your people and connect so that you can join a group, because starting that day, that Sunday the 8th, we'll launch all these groups, and we want you to be a part of them and get involved. Now, here's the disclaimer I want to make about the church, because I love the church. I love this church. I love what churches do all over the world, and I want it to be the magic bullet solution for every problem that we have in our lives, and it's not. The reality is, in the church, we can get you to 90 hours, probably, fairly well. You get in, you serve, you get involved. We can get you to 90 hours, and you will always feel like that's not quite it, because you're going to need the 200 hours. And we can't make that happen for you. This is going to require you to step up and make yourself known and go, all right, I'm in. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to get to know some people. I'm going to get that 200 hours. It's an important thing. You're going to have to invest to get to that 200 hours with someone. And I think what we do in our culture a lot, and maybe American culture encourages this, we invest 200 hours, we just invest it in 100 people. So we give 100 people 2 hours. And then we go, this isn't quite working. I'm so tired. I've spent so much energy. But you gave 100 people 2 hours. That would be like digging 100 shallow holes and wondering why you never struck water. That's not the way it works. You have to dig in one place for a long time and build relationship over time. Now, the kind of people you want in your core and the kind of relationship that you're going to develop there, time is a huge variable, but it's not the only variable. We need to talk about things like vulnerability and trust. We'll talk about those in these weeks to come in this series. But for now, I just want you to think about this. Based on the hours I spend with people, who is my core? High school students, think about that. College, think about that. Young adults, middle-aged, retirees, just think about this. Based on the hours I spend with people, who's there? Who's in the core? Who are those 3 to 5 people? I truly believe God wants this for us. He wants us to have this core group with whom we can have some sort of intimacy. He created us for this. And he sees this when he sees that we're alone, and he desires for us to not be alone. But in order to get there, we're going to have to log some time and put ourselves out there. Let's pray. God, there's such tremendous value in this community. There's so many people that that I have things in common with, but then that are very different than me, that see the world a little differently. And there's something beautiful that happens when we can come together and we can learn from each other and challenge each other when there's some diversity of opinions and ideas, and we can come together and grow, and we have this common unity around knowing you and loving you and following you. And so, God, I pray that we dig deeper. For those who have been frustrated by attempts to move from the 90 to the 200 hours, I pray that they hang in there and dive into this. And for those of us who are maybe newer to that and just sort of waking up to the idea of like, oh, how do I actually get people in that core? I pray this whole series is challenging and helpful, and we get into some concepts that are going to help us move forward so that we are not alone. God, I cannot, and this church cannot cure the loneliness epidemic in America, but we can do something in Richmond, and we can do something here and now for the people that choose to get involved, and we can invite others to be part of this community so that they can eventually be part of the core. God helps to do that. Give us the courage to do it when it gets hard, when it gets messy, when vulnerability gets messy, and we all have hangovers from being vulnerable. Give us the courage to keep leaning in and remaining a part of the community that is so worth fighting for. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.